Knowing I'm an OBGYN, my husband's mistress tried to provoke me by coming to my office for a pregnancy test on purpose. I used a deadly tactic that made her and my husband scream in terror. Hello. Is there any greater happiness in a woman's life than the moment she discovers a tiny life is growing inside her? For me, an OBGYN who had witnessed the arrival of little angels into this world day after day, that happiness felt magnified 1,000 times over. It was a gift I had received after 5 long years of tears, patience, and fervent prayers. I still remember that morning with crystal clarity. The early sunlight streamed through my office window, dancing on the gleaming stainless steel medical instruments, but in my heart, a light 10,000 times more radiant was shining. In my hand, I held my own pregnancy test. 2 lines, 2 pink lines, so sharp they seemed to forcefully confirm a miracle I no longer dared to hope for. I sank into my chair, wrapping my belly with trembling hands. A pregnancy. After 5 long years of treatments, countless tests and injections, and endless days swinging between hope and despair, heaven had finally taken pity on me. Tears streamed down my cheeks, but they were tears of overwhelming joy. Doctor. Sophia Miller, the doctor who had brought so much happiness to countless families, was finally about to fulfill the greatest calling of her life. I thought of my husband Ethan. He would be ecstatic. For the past 5 years, although his mother, Carol Hayes, had constantly pressured me and blamed me for our childlessness, he had always stood by my side, squeezing my hand and telling me, "Don't worry, Sophia. A child is a gift from heaven. If it comes, it will be wonderful, and if not, that's okay too. Having each other is enough." His gentleness and affection had been the greatest force that allowed me to overcome all the guilt and pressure. And I also thought of my mother-in-law. Carol was a bit cold, but deep down I knew her greatest desire was simply to hold a grandchild. This news would undoubtedly change her attitude toward me. She would no longer look at me with suspicion or make hurtful comments. Our family would finally be complete. Suddenly, an idea crossed my mind. I won't tell them yet. I'll keep it a secret and save it as the biggest surprise for the whole family during dinner tonight. I imagined Ethan hugging me with all his might, lifting me into the air and spinning with pure happiness. I imagined my mother-in-law crying with joy, taking my hands and saying the words I had longed to hear for so long. Just thinking about it filled my heart with indescribable glee. I carefully put the pregnancy test back in its box and hid it deep inside my purse. Throughout the day, I worked as if walking on clouds. Everything around me seemed more beautiful. The cries of the newborns in the clinic sounded especially adorable that day. The happy smiles of the young mothers seemed contagious. I finished my shift with my heart overflowing with emotion. On the way home, I purposely stopped by a baby boutique to admire the tiny newborn clothes and precious little booties. My heart swelled with sweet emotions and excited anticipation for my new role. I returned home earlier than usual, my hands full of delicious food. I wanted to prepare a lavish dinner to celebrate. While I was busy in the kitchen, my mother-in-law returned from shopping. "What's the special occasion?" "You're cooking up a storm," she asked in her usual inquisitive tone. I just smiled and replied, "Nothing special, Carol. I'm just in a good mood today and felt like making a nice dinner for everyone." I spoke vaguely on purpose to keep the surprise until the last moment. But just as I was about to serve dinner, the doorbell rang. My mother-in-law hurried to open it, and her voice suddenly lit up. "Oh my goodness, you came. Come in, come in. We've been so eager to see you." I was a bit surprised. We had a guest. The moment I looked out from the kitchen, the smile vanished from my face. My body froze. At the door was not a relative or a close friend, but a young, incredibly beautiful and elegant woman. She wore a designer dress, carried an expensive handbag, and her chestnut hair fell in lush waves. And that face. I had seen that face in an old photograph my husband still kept hidden in his wallet. Isabella Bella Vance. My husband's first, passionate love, the woman who had left him 5 years ago to pursue her MBA at Oxford, had returned. And on the happiest day of my life, of all days, a bad omen ran through me like a cold, poisonous wind. Bella entered the house, walking past me as if I were invisible, and hugged my mother-in-law with a syrupy voice. Carol, it's so good to see you. I got back yesterday, and I was so excited to see you I came straight over. Heavens, look how beautiful you are. My mother-in-law couldn't hide her joy. She hugged her tightly and stroked her hair. It's been 5 years, and you're even more gorgeous. Ethan is going to be thrilled to see you. Sit down and tell me everything. Her treatment of Bella was completely different from how she treated me. It was an undisguised welcome and affection. She had Bella sit on the sofa, served her water, offered her fruit, and endlessly asked how she was doing. They chatted animatedly, as if they had always been the closest of friends. I, standing between the living room and the kitchen, suddenly became an intruder. I was the mistress of this house, the wife of my mother-in-law's son, but at that moment I felt like a mere maid, a stranger, forced to watch as my husband's old flame was received like an empress. The overwhelming happiness of the morning had transformed into anxiety and a vague sense of jealousy. I tried to calm myself. It's just a visit. She probably came to see my mother-in-law, and that's it. Ethan loves me. He would never betray me. But why? Why did my chest ache so much? I decided to hide my pregnancy for a while. I had to see if the return of this ghost from the past would bring a storm to our family, or if it would be just a passing breeze. What I didn't know was that it wouldn't be a breeze, but a hurricane that would sweep away my happiness, my hope, and even the little life I carried in my womb. We met when I was a young medical resident, and he was a talented architect fresh out of graduate school. He wasn't strikingly handsome, but he exuded an aura of calm, maturity, and immense warmth. He courted me with persistence and sincerity. He didn't use flashy lines or expensive gifts. He won my heart with small, thoughtful gestures. He remembered all my favorite foods, even my habit of drinking hot chamomile tea on cold winter mornings. At 2 a.m., after an exhausting night shift, I would always find him at the hospital entrance, waiting for me with a thermos of hot soup in his hands. His love, so gentle and quiet, slowly seeped into my heart, a heart accustomed to reason and rigidity. The day he proposed, he didn't do it with a diamond ring or in a fancy restaurant. He took me to the University of Chicago campus, where I had studied medicine, and standing under the large oak tree where we had our first date, he said, "Sophia, I can't promise you a life of material luxury, but I promise to dedicate my entire life to giving you peace," and I, through tears of happiness, nodded. I believed that the peace he promised was exactly what I had been searching for. Our wedding was celebrated with everyone's blessing. Even my mother-in-law, Carol Hayes, seemed to hold me in high regard at first. She praised me, saying I was competent and a good person. The first few years of our marriage were like a dream. Ethan was an exceptionally attentive husband. Knowing how demanding my profession was, he took care of most of the household chores. He was a wonderful cook and would research new healthy recipes for his beloved wife every weekend. He always supported my career, encouraging me to continue my studies to open my own private practice. In the eyes of our friends and colleagues, we were the model couple, the epitome of a happy family. But nothing in life is perfect. When 2, then 3 years passed and a baby didn't arrive, the first cracks began to appear in our happiness. The initial pressure came from my mother-in-law. Carol, who had once been so fond of me, began to grow impatient. At first, it was hints during meals. The neighbor in 5B is a grandmother now. He's adorable, so chubby. Or, Chris, Ethan's friend, got married after you two, and they already have 2 kids. Gradually, the hints turned into direct reproaches. She dragged me to all sorts of renowned specialists and herbalists. She bought all kinds of teas and natural remedies, forcing me to drink concoctions with horrible smells and tastes. Every month, as my period approached, she would sigh deeply. Those sighs were like knives stabbing at my self-esteem. I broke down and blamed myself immensely. As an OB/GYN, I knew my body well. I knew the problem was mine, and the guilt and pain of not being able to give my husband a child nearly consumed me. But even in those darkest moments, Ethan was always there. He protected me, becoming an unconditional shield against his mother's pressure. Whenever she blamed me, he would say gently, "Mom, don't talk like that. Sophia is stressed enough. A child comes when it's meant to, and we're still young." It will happen. When we were alone, he would hold me and console me. Don't overthink it. It's not your fault. No matter what happens, I'll always be by your side. I love you for being you, not because you're a baby-making machine. It was those words, his understanding and tenderness, that saved me. They gave me the strength to keep fighting. Together, we traveled the country, seeking out the best hospitals, the best specialists, trying every possible method. Through each cycle of hope and disappointment, he was there to support and comfort me. Although the longing for a child had left a gray smudge on the portrait of our family, it was still, overall, a warm and happy picture. I believed that with his love, we could overcome anything. I believed my ideal husband would never change, that he would never betray the promise of peace he had made to me. But perhaps I was too naive. I didn't realize that behind that understanding and tolerant facade, the disappointment and longing for a child were also growing within him, a longing he had hidden so perfectly. And when another woman appeared who could give him that, the solid fortress of love I so firmly believed in began to crack, ready to crumble with a single gust of wind. The overwhelming happiness of discovering my pregnancy that morning had dispelled all the dark clouds that had covered my soul for the past 5 years. I felt reborn, freed from all burden and guilt. I was no longer a dry, infertile tree. Soon, I would be a mother. I imagined a romantic and cozy dinner. I would prepare Ethan and my mother-in-law's favorite dishes, and during the meal, I would pull out a small gift box. Inside would be a pair of tiny knit booties I had bought in a hurry during my lunch break and the first ultrasound of our baby. I imagined Ethan's surprised expression turning into uncontainable joy. I imagined my mother-in-law's tears of happiness. Our family would finally be complete. She had never used the words beautiful or accomplished to describe me. While busy in the kitchen, I heard the sound of the front door opening, followed by my mother-in-law's cheerful laughter. "Oh, make yourself at home. Sit here, sit down, and tell me everything." I was a bit surprised. We had a guest, and one of my mother-in-laws at that. I quickly dried my hands and went out to the living room to greet them politely. But the moment I saw the guest sitting on the sofa, the smile froze on my face. I was completely stunned. The kitchen towel in my hand fell to the floor without me noticing. There sat a beautiful young woman. She wore a jade-colored silk dress that enhanced her fair skin and elegant figure. Her long hair fell in lush waves, and her face was perfectly made up. But what paralyzed me wasn't her beauty, but the fact that I recognized her. Isabella Bella Vance, Ethan's first love, the one he had been so madly in love with. The woman who had been by his side throughout college and who, 5 years ago, had ruthlessly left him to pursue her dream of studying abroad. I had seen her picture in an old album Ethan still kept. He had told me it was just the past, that he had forgotten her long ago. But then, why? Why was she here, in my house, on this special day? Bella didn't seem surprised or uncomfortable to see me at all. On the contrary, she smiled. A smile full of confidence, with a slight hint of provocation. She stood up, walked towards me, and extended her hand as if to greet me. "Hi, Sophia, right? Ethan's wife. I'm Bella, an old friend of his. I just got back, and when I heard he got married, I had to come and say hello to the family." Her voice was sweet as honey, but her eyes scanned me with the sharpness of a knife. From my casual clothes to my makeup-free face, it was a look full of comparison and superiority. My mother-in-law, Carol, also got up quickly and went to Bella's side, taking her arm with familiarity, as if they were the real mother and daughter. "Oh, Sophia, come see. A friend of Ethan's is here. It's Bella. They were very close in the past. She just got back from the UK. Isn't she beautiful and accomplished?" She spoke with pride, as if Bella were her own daughter-in-law. It was a completely different attitude than the one she showed when introducing me to her friends. Her treatment of Bella was completely different from how she treated me. It was an undisguised welcome and affection. She had Bella sit on the sofa, served her water, offered her fruit, and endlessly asked how she was doing. They chatted animatedly, as if they had always been the closest of friends. I, standing between the living room and the kitchen, suddenly became an intruder. Standing between the two of them, I suddenly felt completely superfluous. out of place. I was the lady of the house, but I was being treated like an unwanted guest. A bad feeling, a cold anxiety, began to seep into every one of my cells. Why was my mother-in-law so close to her son's old flame? Why was she receiving her with such enthusiasm? And why had she chosen to return at this exact moment? "Yes, hello," I managed to reply curtly, ignoring her offered hand. I turned to go back to the kitchen to escape the suffocating atmosphere, but Bella spoke. A question tossed out casually, but one that stabbed directly at my pain. "Sophia, you're an OBGYN, right? Ethan told me you're very good. So, I guess you two must have some good news by now, don't you?" That question was like a needle piercing my euphoric heart. I turned back to her and saw the malicious smile on her lips. She knew. She surely knew about my difficulties conceiving and was bringing it up on purpose to hurt me. "That's none of your business," I replied in a frosty voice. The atmosphere in the living room suddenly grew tense. My mother-in-law seemed to notice. She hurried to intervene. She was just asking politely, "Why are you so sensitive? Come on, sit down and chat for a while. I'll go make some tea." With those words, she quickly went to the kitchen, leaving Bella and me alone. I knew I couldn't reveal my pregnancy in this situation. The happiness and surprise I had planned had been ruined by the appearance of this unwanted guest named the Past. I decided to keep the secret for now. I had to find out if her return was a coincidence or a deliberate plan. I couldn't imagine that my decision to remain silent would be the prelude to a tragedy, the beginning of a pain 10,000 times greater than any I had ever experienced. Bella didn't seem surprised or uncomfortable to see me at all. On the contrary, she smiled, a smile full of confidence, with a slight hint of provocation. She stood up, walked towards me, and extended her hand as if to greet me. "Hi, Sophia, right? Ethan's wife. I'm Bella, an old friend of his. I just got back, and when I heard he got married, I had to come and say hello to the family." He approached and opened his arms, as if to hug her, but stopped midway. Probably because I was there. He just gave her a pat on the shoulder, a gesture that seemed intimate yet was fraught with awkwardness. Bella, on the other hand, acted completely natural. She stood up and smiled radiantly. "I wanted to surprise everyone. Ethan, you look more handsome and mature." She said it looking at him with a mix of admiration and a slight flirtatiousness. My mother-in-law couldn't hide her delight. She rushed to take Ethan's hand. Look how much Bella still cares about you." As soon as she got back, she came to see us. "Come on, everyone, let's sit down for dinner. I've prepared all your favorite dishes." She shamelessly took all the credit for my work. I silently placed the cutlery on the table without saying a word. Throughout the dinner, Bella and my mother-in-law did most of the talking. They enthusiastically reminisced about old times, anecdotes from when Bella and Ethan were a couple. The trips they took, the gifts they exchanged, stories that I, the current wife, had never heard. Ethan, sitting between them, seemed somewhat uncomfortable. He would occasionally turn to me to serve me some food and ask a formal question. "This is good, have some more." But I knew his mind was no longer there. His gaze would occasionally drift towards Bella, and his expression was complex, indecipherable. And I, at my own family's dinner table, felt like a stranger. Every bite I swallowed tasted bitter. The joy of the baby in my womb seemed completely overshadowed by clouds of doubt and jealousy. After dinner, Bella stayed for a long time. She chatted with my mother-in-law, but her eyes never stopped seeking out Ethan. Around 10 p.m., she finally decided to leave. Ethan offered to walk her home, using the excuse that it was dangerous for a woman alone at night, even though Bella's apartment building was right across the street. Standing at the door, I watched their backs as they walked away together. They looked like a perfect match. A bitter feeling washed over my chest. Maybe I'm just the one who came after. A mere replacement. That night, Ethan came back very late. He said he had stopped by an old friend's house. He got into bed, turned his back to me, and pretended to fall asleep immediately. I knew he was avoiding me. I didn't ask any questions either. I just lay there, silently listening to his steady breathing, but I knew something between us had broken. An invisible crack had appeared, and it was getting bigger every day. In the following days, Ethan's change became even more apparent. He started leaving early and coming home late more frequently. Sudden business trips multiplied. His cell phone, which he used to leave anywhere, was now an inseparable part of his body. He even took it to the bathroom, put it on silent, and always left it face down. At night, when I was deeply asleep, I could vaguely feel him sneaking out to the balcony to talk to someone. He also started to smell of an unfamiliar woman's perfume. It wasn't a cheap, overpowering fragrance, but the same sophisticated and elegant scent I had smelled on Bella that day. When I asked, he simply said it was a coworker's perfume. He started to get irritated and angry with me over insignificant things. He complained that the food was too salty, that my way of dressing was old-fashioned, that I wasn't engaging enough. Everything he used to praise had now become an excuse to find fault with me. The happy, warm atmosphere of our home completely disappeared, replaced by tension and a terrifying coldness. My mother-in-law either didn't notice her son's change or deliberately ignored it. She treated me as usual but frequently mentioned Bella in our conversations. Bella is incredible. As soon as she got back, she landed a management position at a major firm. Bella gave me this expensive anti-aging cream yesterday. It's fantastic. Every time she mentioned her, it was like a needle stabbing my bleeding heart. I lived for weeks in agony and doubt. I wanted to confront him, show him our son's ultrasound, but I was afraid. Afraid to face the truth. Afraid that lifting the veil of secrecy would only reveal the cruel reality of betrayal. I still clung to a faint thread of hope that it was all a misunderstanding, that my husband still loved me. But in the end, it was Bella herself, with unparalleled shamelessness, who shattered my last fantasies and pushed me into the abyss of pain and despair. Nearly 3 weeks had passed since Bella's appearance. 3 weeks that felt like a century to me, a century of silence, suspicion, and secret pain. I still hadn't told anyone about my pregnancy. The initial joy had been completely replaced by anxiety. I was afraid that this baby couldn't save our marriage on the brink of collapse. On the contrary, I feared it would become a burden, a reason for him to leave me even more cruelly. I decided that after confirming once more that the baby was healthy, I would have a frank talk with Ethan, no matter what. To maintain secrecy, I made an appointment with a colleague in another department at my own hospital, but fate seemed determined to mock me. That morning, just as I finished my shift and was about to head to my colleague's office, my nurse assistant came in with a very flustered expression. "Dr. Miller, it's that woman who came the other day. She says she has an appointment with you." I felt my heart stop. Bella again. What was she doing here? "I don't have any appointment with her," I said in a cold voice. "Tell her I'm very busy." "I already told her that," the nurse replied, "but she says if you don't see her today, she'll wait here until you agree, and she added that this has to do with Mr. Hayes, and that if you don't want to cause a scene at the hospital, you'd better see her." She was threatening me. In my own workplace. Rage rose in my throat, but I quickly suppressed it. I knew that with people like her, the bigger the problem became, the more satisfied she would be. "All right, let her in," I said with a tired voice. Bella entered, as dazzling and haughty as ever. But this time, instead of a mocking smile or a provocative attitude, her face showed a certain look of concern and unease. She sat in the chair and, without beating around the bush, got straight to the point. "Dr. Miller, I think I'm pregnant." Even though I had mentally prepared myself, hearing those words from her own mouth was like an electric shock running down my spine. "Why do you think that?" I forced myself to ask in the most professional voice possible. "Well, my period is late. I've been feeling tired and nauseous. I took a home test, and it showed 2 lines," she said, unconsciously placing a hand on her belly. Then she looked up at me. In her eyes, there was no longer a challenge, but a mixture of pleading and extreme audacity. "Sophia, could you do an ultrasound to confirm it? I don't trust anywhere else. Ethan told me you were the best." She was asking me, her lover's legal wife and an OB/GYN, to perform an ultrasound for her extramarital pregnancy. Could there be a greater humiliation? I wanted to stand up and throw her out that very instant, but then another thought, colder and crueler, stopped me. "No, I won't. She has brought the opportunity to me herself, the opportunity to know the truth, and to end all of this. "All right," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "Since you're an old friend of Mr. Hayes, I'll make an exception. Please lie down on the examination table." She lay on the ultrasound table with a triumphant air. During the procedure, the office was silent. Only the rhythmic sound of the ultrasound machine could be heard. I moved the transducer over her abdomen, my eyes fixed on the screen, and then the image appeared, a small gestational sac nestled in the uterus. I activated the measurement mode, and the numbers appeared. Pregnancy of approximately 3 weeks. I felt as if someone were squeezing my heart. The last shred of hope I had crumbled completely. 3 weeks ago was when Ethan had lied to me, saying he was going on a business trip to San Francisco. It turns out he was with her. It turns out all the words of love he whispered to me every night were lies. "Well, Sophia?" Bella's voice sounded, feigning nervousness. I turned to her. I could no longer maintain my composure. "You're pregnant," I said in a hoarse voice. "About 3 weeks." Hearing that, Bella's worried expression disappeared completely. In its place, a radiant smile appeared, the smile of a victor. "Really, Sophia? Oh, what a relief." She sat up with a jump, not caring that she still had ultrasound gel on her belly. She looked at me and, as if she no longer needed to hide it, she spoke. Her gaze was full of provocation and arrogance. "So, Ethan is going to be a father for real," she said, emphasizing each word. "I knew it. We only tried once." "It seems the problem wasn't with Ethan, dear. It was you." Those words were the final stab in my bleeding heart. Not only had she openly stolen my husband, but she was also gloating in my pain and the greatest source of my guilt. The anger that had been simmering for so long erupted. I was no longer Dr. Sophia Miller. I was just a betrayed wife, a woman humiliated to the extreme. "Shut up!" I screamed, my voice breaking with rage. "You have no right to talk to me like that." "Why not?" Bella sneered. "I'm carrying your husband's child. Soon I'll give him a son to carry on his family line. And you, a woman who can't have children, should step aside for your own good." I lunged at her. I didn't know what I was doing. I just wanted to hit that insolent face, to tear away that victorious smile. But before I could touch her, the office door burst open. Ethan ran in. His sudden appearance didn't surprise Bella as much as it did me. He stood there panting, his shirt unbuttoned, his face filled with panic. Bella must have called or texted him, putting on a show about me mistreating her. And my ideal husband, without a moment's hesitation, had rushed to protect his mistress and their illegitimate child. Like a professional actress, Bella instantly changed her demeanor. The brazen, provocative woman vanished, replaced by a fragile, frightened expression. She hastily covered her belly and ran to Ethan, saying in a sobbing voice, "Ethan, you're here. I was so scared, Sophia." She let the sentence hang, breaking into fake sobs and burying her face in Ethan's chest. Ethan held Bella, patting her trembling back. Then he looked up at me, but it wasn't the gaze of Ethan, the tender and loving husband I knew. It was the look of a stranger, a cold gaze, filled with anger and disappointment. "Sophia, what are you doing?" he said, almost growling. "Bella is pregnant. Don't you know that? How could you do this to her?" I stood frozen in place. He was blaming me. Without asking, without listening, he had decided that I was the aggressor and she was the poor victim. I felt my heart shatter into a million pieces. The man who had sworn to always protect me was now holding another woman in front of me and blaming his own wife. How could I do what to her? I let out a bitter, scathing laugh. "Do you know what she said to me? Do you know how she humiliated me? Or is this whole thing a show you two cooked up to corner me?" "Don't be ridiculous," Ethan shouted, probably because my words had hit the mark. "I didn't know you were like this, Sophia. Blinded by jealousy. You've lost your mind. Bella just came for a checkup, to ask for your help." "Help!" I screamed, and tears of rage gushed out. "Help her? Give an ultrasound to my husband's mistress for the child she's carrying, and congratulate her with a smile? Are you even human, Ethan?" "Sophia, please, calm down." Ethan lowered his voice, probably afraid the scandal would grow larger in the hospital. "What happened with Bella and me? It's my fault. I'll explain later, but she's pregnant with my child now. You can't hurt her or the baby. My child. Those two words were like a hammer that shattered the last hope and illusion I had left. He finally admitted it. He openly admitted in front of me that the child was his. Hurt her? I looked at him with eyes full of despair. You think I would hurt that baby? You think an OBGYN like me would be capable of something so immoral? In your eyes, am I such a vile and cruel person? I didn't even know what I was saying. The pain and anger had made me lose my reason. I just needed to talk, to scream, to vent my rage. I walked towards them and pointed a finger at Bella. And you, don't think that carrying that baby gives you the right to threaten me. You. Before I could finish, Ethan lunged forward and pushed me hard. Sophia, I told you to stop. His push wasn't light. It was rough and violent. I lost my balance completely. I fell backward, and my back slammed hard against the edge of a metal instrument table. A sharp pain that shot to my bones spread through my entire body, but that pain was nothing compared to the stabbing ache that was rising from my lower abdomen. A cramping pain, a sensation that, as an OBGYN, I knew all too well what it meant. I looked down and saw it. Bright red blood was beginning to stain my white dress, spreading wider and wider. No, I stammered, clutching my belly as my whole body trembled violently. My baby. The baby I had longed for 5 years. Ethan and Bella also froze when they saw the blood. Ethan's face turned white as a sheet. Maybe he hadn't meant to, but it was too late. Sophia, he stammered. My world began to fade to black. The last thing I felt before losing consciousness was the gut-wrenching pain of a mother about to lose her child, and the image of my husband, bewildered, but still holding his mistress tightly. That cruel push had not only knocked me down, but it had also pushed me into the deepest pit of hell. When I woke up, the smell of disinfectant, so characteristic of hospitals, filled my nostrils, a scent all too familiar, but today it felt nauseating and terrifying. I was in a private room, in the best VIP suite of my own department. The afternoon sun filtered through the window, casting a pale, languid yellow light on the white walls. Slowly, I brought my hand to my belly. It was empty, a cold, terrifying emptiness. The womb that had harbored the greatest hope of my life now only contained a dull ache. My baby was gone. A choked sob escaped my chest. I bit my lower lip hard to keep from crying out, but hot, bitter tears slid silently down my cheeks. The physical pain was nothing compared to the pain that was tearing my soul apart. I had lost my child, the child I had fought for with tears and patience for 5 years. The child who had left in a hurry before I could fully feel the joy of being a mother, and the bitterest part was that he was gone because of his own father. That careless but cruel push had taken everything from me. The room door opened quietly, and the head nurse, a close colleague, came in. She looked at me with a mixture of pity and apology. She approached the bed and took my hand. Sophia, you're awake. You have to be strong. Everything will be okay. She said no more, but I knew. I'm an OBGYN. I knew my condition better than anyone. I had suffered a miscarriage, and the situation was probably even worse. Nurse, I said weakly, my throat dry. Tell me the truth. My baby, what happened? The nurse was silent for a moment, avoiding my gaze. Then she sighed. Sophia, the fall was too severe. We did everything we could, but we couldn't save the baby. Those words were like a giant mallet striking my soul. Everything around me began to spin and crumble. I had lost my child, who was not yet even fully formed. This pain was worse than death. I screamed in anguish. I broke down, sobbing uncontrollably, and lost consciousness again amidst overwhelming despair. The second time I woke up, the sky had darkened, and only a dim yellow nightlight was on in the room. My mother-in-law, Carol, was sitting in a chair beside me, her face stern and displeased. Seeing me open my eyes, without a single word of comfort, she began to scold me. You're finally awake? Look at the mess you've made. Throwing a fit over some simple jealousy and ending up like this. Do you know how hard you've made things for my son? I looked at her, stunned. Her son had pushed me. He had caused the death of his own grandchild, and now she was blaming me. "Carol, what are you saying?" I stammered. Ethan pushed me." "So what if he pushed you?" "He only did it to protect the baby Bella is carrying." "Who told you to lunge at her like that, without thinking about your husband's reputation, making a scene at the hospital over an affair? What kind of doctor are you? Do you know the rumors that are flying around? You've embarrassed the whole family." In her words, there was not a hint of grief for the grandchild she had just lost, nor any concern for the health of her daughter-in-law, who had been between life and death. In her mind, there was only room for reputation, for her son, and probably for the grandchild his mistress was carrying. Her cruelty chilled my blood. Just then, Ethan walked in. He looked tired and haggard, but in his eyes there was no remorse, only irritation and evasion. He didn't dare to look me directly in the eye. "You're awake?" he asked, a meaningless question. "Our baby is gone," I whispered, my voice seeming to dissolve into the air. I wanted to find a glimmer of guilt or remorse in his humanity, but there was none. Ethan was silent for a moment. Then he sighed. A sigh that mixed exhaustion and even relief. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "If I had known," he continued. "Well, I guess it was fate. Things have come to this point, and regret won't solve anything. Get some rest and take care of yourself." Fate. He called his betrayal, his violence, and the death of his own child, fate. His cold and cruel attitude completely extinguished the last hope and illusion I had left. The physical pain, the pain of losing my child, and the pain of betrayal all mixed together and turned into a frigid emptiness. I felt nothing anymore. Love, hate, it had all died. I just lay there, staring at the white ceiling like a soulless corpse. I knew that my marriage, my life, had ended completely on that fateful day. The next day, I was discharged. I returned to the house I once called home, but which was now nothing more than a cold, empty shell. My mother-in-law wasn't there. She had probably gone to take care of her future daughter-in-law and her precious grandchild. Better that way. I didn't want to see her again either. I silently entered the bedroom. The room that was filled with memories of a false happiness. Everything was the same, but in my eyes it seemed strange and lifeless. I pulled a suitcase out from under the bed and began to pack. I only packed what belonged to me, my clothes, my books, and my personal items. I took nothing Ethan had bought me, though there weren't many things. I also left all the gifts my mother-in-law had given me, gifts filled with calculation and condescension. I wanted to leave that house as cleanly as possible, with no attachment to anything that belonged to them. While organizing the dresser drawer, my hand stopped on a small velvet box. Inside was our wedding band. I opened the box, and the small diamond glittered under the light, but to my eyes it was nothing more than a worthless piece of glass. I remembered the day he gave me this ring. He had said, "This ring may not be big, but my love for you is infinite." It turns out his love did have a limit, and that limit was a child. I smiled bitterly, closed the box, and tossed it into a corner of the closet. Just then, the door opened. Ethan was back. He stood in the doorway, watching me pack with a complex expression. Finally, he spoke. He didn't start with an apology, but with an excuse. "Sophia, I know you're angry with me, but try to see it from my perspective. I've been under a lot of pressure too. It's been 5 years, Sophia. 5 years of bearing my mother's expectations and the whispers of relatives. I'm a man too, and I desperately wanted a child." I lifted my head to look at him, a faint smile on my lips. "And that's why you found someone who could satisfy that desire." Ethan seemed a bit taken aback by my frankness. What happened with Bella was an impulse. I was going through a tough time, and she had just come back from abroad. She knew how to comfort me, to understand me. Comfort you by sleeping with another woman's husband, and understand you by coming to his wife's office to flaunt the child she's carrying? Don't try to justify your betrayal anymore, Ethan. It only makes you seem more despicable. He fell silent, as if admitting his guilt. "Where are you going now?" he finally asked in a hoarse voice. "Somewhere you are not," I replied, continuing to fold my clothes. "Sophia." He tried to say something, probably an apology or an excuse, but I didn't give him the chance. "Don't say anything, Ethan," I interrupted, looking him directly in the eye. It's all over. I don't want to hear any more explanations. I just want you to know one thing." I paused, taking a deep breath for my final farewell, a farewell stained with tears and pain. I loved you so much. I thought that having you by my side, I could overcome any difficulty. I believed in your promise, I believed in your understanding, but I was wrong. You didn't love me. You only wanted the image of a perfect wife who could give you a son, and when someone else could do that job in my place, you didn't hesitate to discard me, and our son, my voice began to tremble. Do you know, that fateful morning when I found out I was pregnant, you have no idea how happy I was. I planned a very special dinner to give you and your mother the good news. I thought our family would finally be complete, but then she showed up. And you chose her. You chose her son, and you ruthlessly pushed away the wife who was carrying your own blood in her womb. My tears burst forth. I could no longer hold them back. You didn't just kill our son, Ethan. You killed my love and the last shred of trust I placed in you. You killed the woman named Sophia Miller, who once loved you with all her heart. From this moment on, there is nothing between us. Not love, not hate, just two strangers. I zipped up the suitcase. The sound was so firm and cruel. I left the divorce papers I had already signed on the desk, but next to them, I also left the ultrasound of our baby. And I wrote one last line, a line written in red ink, like an indelible bloodstain. You killed our son. I dragged the suitcase and walked past him as he stood, stiff as a statue. I didn't look back. I walked out of that house, out of that marriage, and out of his life forever. I know the road ahead will be very hard. This wound will probably never heal, but I have to live. I have to live to start over, to find myself again, and to live for my son, whose life was unjustly taken away. After leaving that house, I didn't look back. I sold my car and everything that reminded me of my failed marriage. I decided to put my life in a suitcase and leave Chicago. To leave behind the city that had given me as much love as it had unbearable pain. I needed a new place where no one knew me, where I could start from scratch and heal the bleeding wounds of my heart myself. I requested a transfer to a large international hospital in Santa Barbara, California, a beautiful coastal city I had always wanted to visit. I rented a small apartment with a balcony overlooking the ocean. Every morning, I woke up to the gentle sound of the waves, and every evening, I walked along the white sand, letting the sea carry away my sorrows. The vast ocean seemed to soothe my broken soul. I immersed myself in work as a way to forget everything. I volunteered for night shifts and participated in the most complex surgeries. My professionalism and dedication soon earned me the recognition of my colleagues and patients. To them, I was simply Dr. Sophia Miller, a competent and elegant physician, albeit somewhat cold and distant. No one knew that behind that facade of strength hid a shattered heart and a stormy past. My life went on like this, in an apparent calm, until he appeared. His name was Alexander Alex Sterling, and he was the son of the president of Sterling Group, the largest investor in our hospital. He was different from other wealthy heirs I had known. There was no arrogance or ostentation about him, but a remarkable calm and maturity, and eyes that seemed to speak, full of warmth and deep understanding. Our first meeting was in an emergency situation. His sister Emily, who was 33 weeks pregnant, was admitted to our hospital with a threatened preterm labor. I was part of the surgical team and managed to save both her life and her babies from the brink of death. After the successful operation, Alex came to find me personally to thank me. He looked at me with a mixture of gratitude and a slight awe. "Dr. Miller, thank you. You didn't just save my sister, you saved our entire family." From that day on, he started appearing at the hospital frequently. He didn't say he was coming to see me, but used the excuse of visiting his sister and his nephew in the incubator. But each time he would bring a bouquet of sunflowers, my favorite flowers, and a cup of hot chamomile tea, the kind I always drank after my shifts. He wasn't forward or aggressive, he was just there, silently showing me small but very delicate attentions. He talked to me about work, books, music. He was like a fresh, gentle breeze blowing into my life, which had turned completely gray. I knew he liked me, but my heart was dead. The wound Ethan had left was still too deep, and it was like a wall of ice that prevented any external warmth from penetrating. I deliberately avoided him, repeatedly turning down his invitations to dinner or the movies. I didn't want to give him false hope, nor did I want to get hurt again. But Alex was not one to give up easily. He was persistent. Instead of pursuing me ostentatiously, he chose to be a friend, a moral support by my side. He listened to my worries. Though I never told him about my past, he comforted me when I was sad. He drew me out of my shell. He took me to places with beautiful scenery, and we participated in charity events together. Slowly, his sincerity and patience began to melt the ice around my heart. I started to get used to his presence. I started to look forward to his sunflowers and his tea every day. I started to smile again, a real smile. I felt my life beginning to bloom again. On the barren land of my soul, a new sprout of life, a new beginning was starting to germinate. But would I have the courage to accept it? Could I leave the ghosts of the past behind and embrace a new happiness? It was a question for which I still had no answer myself. Alex's attention seeped into the barren soil of my soul like a warm stream. He was gentle, patient, and demanded nothing from me. He was simply by my side like a kindred spirit, listening and understanding. Gradually, I began to open up. I told him about my work, the stress, the difficult cases. I also told him about my unfulfilled dreams and the books I had read, but I never mentioned my past, my broken marriage. It was still too big a scar, a pain I wasn't ready to show anyone. One evening, after a walk on the beach, Alex stopped and looked at me under the moonlight. His gaze seemed incredibly tender and sincere. "Sophia," he called me by my name, no longer the distant doctor, "Miller. I know you've been through something very difficult in your past. I won't ask what it was. I just want you to know that from the first moment I saw you at the hospital, I was deeply impressed by your strength and professionalism. And the more I get to know you, the more I'm drawn to your soul and who you are. Sophia, I love you. Would you give me the chance to be by your side, to take care of you and protect you?" His sudden confession, with the romantic moonlit sea as a backdrop, would have been any woman's dream. But for me, at that moment, it was like a bucket of cold water. It resurrected all the pain and the ghosts of the past that I was striving to bury. The image of Ethan, of Bella, the tear-stained ultrasound, it all came rushing back, churning my heart. I was scared. Scared to love again, scared to trust a man again, and be betrayed. I took a step back, distancing myself from him. "Alex," I said, my voice trembling but very firm. "I'm sorry. I really appreciate your feelings. You're a good person, but I can't. My heart is already dead. I can't love anymore. Don't waste your time on someone like me." With that, I turned and fled. I fled from him, from his confession, and from the feelings that were blossoming in my own heart. I cried all night. I cried for the cruelty of fate. Why, just when I was trying to close off my heart, would heaven send me such a wonderful man? For the next few days, I deliberately avoided Alex. I changed my work shifts and stopped walking on the beach. I rejected his calls and messages. I raised a wall of ice, determined to push him out of my life. I thought my cold attitude would tire him out and make him give up, but once again, I underestimated his sincerity. Alex didn't give up. He no longer came to see me, nor did he call or text me. But his care was still there. Every morning, a bouquet of sunflowers was still on my desk. At lunchtime, a container of nutritious food would still arrive with no return address. When I was on a night shift, a nurse would still bring me a hot chamomile tea, saying someone anonymous had ordered it. Instead of attacking, he remained by my side in silence, showing his feelings with discreet actions. He respected my decision and gave me space, but he didn't leave me alone. That sincerity, that patience, had a destructive power far greater than 1,000 confessions. The wall of ice I had worked so hard to build began to slowly crack. I started to look forward to his sunflowers and his tea every day. I started to smile again, a real smile. I felt my life beginning to bloom again. On the barren land of my soul, a new sprout of life, a new beginning was starting to germinate. But would I have the courage to accept it? Could I leave the ghosts of the past behind and embrace a new happiness? It was a question for which I still had no answer myself. While I was struggling in Santa Barbara between the wounds of my heart and Alex's persistent courtship, My ex-husband's life in Chicago was not as peaceful as he had hoped. After successfully getting rid of me, he rushed to have a grand wedding with Bella. My ex-mother-in-law, Carol, was ecstatic. She boasted everywhere about her new daughter-in-law, beautiful, fertile, and soon to give her a precious grandson to carry on the family line. Together, they painted a rosy future built on my pain and loss. A few months later, Bella gave birth to a son. The child was healthy and plump. Ethan and his mother couldn't have been happier. They named him Matthew, hoping he would become the pride and heir of the family. He had achieved what he longed for most, a beautiful wife and a son. His life seemed perfect. But karma, dear listeners, may be slow, but it never fails. Bella, who had pretended to be a model daughter-in-law, once she gave birth and fulfilled her mission, began to show her true colors. She had no intention of being a good wife or mother. She had used the pregnancy as a tool to trap Ethan and secure a life of luxury. She left the newborn in Carol's care and dedicated herself day and night to partying with her friends, shopping, and traveling. The house, which I had kept immaculate, was now messy. Family meals disappeared, replaced by takeout and arguments. At first, Ethan tried to please her and be patient, but gradually he grew tired. He began to realize that the woman he had chosen was nothing more than a beautiful vase, empty and selfish on the inside. He started to remember the days we spent together. He missed the home-cooked meals I prepared for him. He missed the tidy house. He missed my affection and my care. But it was too late. The real tragedy came as little Matthew grew. The child looked nothing like Ethan. While Ethan and his entire family had dark hair and brown eyes, the boy had slightly blonde hair and, most notably, strange gray-blue eyes. At first, everyone thought it was a genetic quirk, or that he resembled some distant ancestor, but the whispers from neighbors and relatives became more and more frequent. The boy looks nothing like Ethan, does he? He looks almost Northern European. Those words were like needles pricking at Ethan's pride and his growing suspicion. He began to observe more closely. He compared his childhood photos with his son's. The more he compared, the more terrified he became. There was no resemblance. One day, unable to bear it any longer, he secretly took a hair sample from the child and himself and sent it to a genetics lab. He did it secretly, with the faint hope that it was all just his paranoia. A week later, when he received the results in a sealed white envelope, his hands trembled violently. Together, they painted a rosy future built on my pain and loss. 0%. The son he had wanted so badly, the precious grandson his mother had waited for so long, was not his blood. He had been deceived. He had been raising a stranger's child. That cruel truth was more painful than 1,000 knives. He rushed home like a madman and threw the report in Bella's face. "What is this? Explain it to me. Whose child is this?" Faced with irrefutable proof, Bella could no longer act. She knelt, cried, and confessed everything. That she had been with a European man while studying abroad, that she already knew she was pregnant when she returned to the States, and that she had set a trap for Ethan, using the baby to tie him down and secure a legal husband and a meal ticket. Ethan completely fell apart. That same night, he threw Bella out of the house. His second marriage ended abruptly and humiliatingly. The traitor's tragedy had finally arrived. He lost his wife, his son, and his honor. Now he was left alone with his guilt, his regret, and the infinite pain for the ex-wife and the lost son he could never get back. After the truth about Bella's son was revealed, the lives of Ethan and his mother were tinged with the gray of shame and regret. Carol, from the shock, fell ill and became bedridden. She refused to eat and only muttered 2 words: divine justice. The dream of a grandson to carry on the family line had vanished like smoke, leaving only a humiliating and desolate truth. For a fake grandchild, she had cruelly rejected her real one, and a daughter-in-law who was once incredibly devoted. The late remorse tormented her even in her dreams. Ethan lived like a shadow. He quit his job at the firm and locked himself in his room day after day, drowning himself in alcohol and cigarettes. My image, and especially the ultrasound of our lost son that I had left him, constantly haunted him. He began to realize that he had lost the most valuable thing in the world. Out of selfishness and a blind longing, he had shattered his own happiness with his own hands. His career, his reputation, everything was meaningless. Now he was left alone with his pain and a regret he could never erase. After months of agony, of countless sleepless nights drowned in alcohol and late remorse, Ethan finally made a decision. He had to find me. Not to beg me to come back, nor to ask for a forgiveness he knew he didn't deserve. He just wanted to see me once, even from a distance, and apologize from the bottom of his heart. An apology he should have given me a long time ago. He wanted to see with his own eyes that I was okay, that I had overcome the storm he had caused. This idea became an obsession, the only faint flame burning in his dark, dead-end life. He embarked on a journey like a pilgrim seeking to reclaim a lost faith. He sold his house in Chicago, the place that was imbued with our happy memories, but had now become a prison that held his guilt. Every object, every photo was like an invisible knife stabbing his heart every day. He had to escape from there. He used all the money from the sale, not to start a new life, but to fund a hopeless search. He traveled the country, chasing any faint trace of me. He went to the hospital where I had worked, asking all my former colleagues, from doctors and nurses to the cleaning staff, but he only received rejections and pitying looks. Dr. Miller left a long time ago. We don't know where she went. He went to the coffee shop where we used to have dates. He sat at the same table, trying to find a bit of the familiar warmth, but he only felt emptiness and cold. He contacted all our few mutual friends, but no one knew where I was. It was as if I had evaporated from his world without a trace. Sometimes he wanted to give up. He would sit alone in unfamiliar bars, drinking until he was drunk, wondering what the point of his quest was. Maybe I had already started a new life and had completely forgotten him. Maybe his appearance now would only bring me more confusion and pain. But an invisible force, perhaps the image of our lost son, perhaps the remorse that ate at his conscience day and night, urged him to continue. He couldn't live in peace without being able to say those words of forgiveness, even just once. The search lasted for almost a year filled with loneliness and despair. Finally, through one of my best friends from medical school, Megan, whom he had great difficulty contacting, he found a clue. The friend, after much hesitation, told him that I was working at an international hospital in the coastal city of Santa Barbara. Without hesitation, without a shred of doubt, that very night he took a flight to Santa Barbara. The next morning, as the first rays of sun lit up the beautiful coastal city, he arrived. But he didn't go directly to the hospital to look for me. He felt a fear he had never experienced before, fear that I would be shocked to see him, fear that reliving the sad memories would hurt me again, and above all, fear of facing my cold, unfamiliar gaze. He rented a room in a small hotel with a balcony that overlooked the hospital entrance and, like a criminal, began to observe my life from a distance. He would sit there for hours, waiting for a familiar figure. And finally, he saw me. He saw me walk out the main door of the hospital, still in my white doctor's coat, my hair pulled back in a neat bun. But on my face, there was no longer sadness, fatigue, or resignation. Instead, there was confidence, serenity, and a light that radiated from within. He saw me talking animatedly with my colleagues, smiling from ear to ear, a smile he hadn't seen in a long time. It was so beautiful it made his heart glad, but at the same time so painful it broke it. And then he saw the other man, a tall, elegant man who waited for me every evening at the hospital entrance with a bouquet of flowers in his hand. He saw how that man, Alex, affectionately placed my coat over my shoulders when it got chilly. He saw how Alex gently opened the car door for me and looked at me with eyes full of love and tenderness. And he saw how I responded to that look with a smile of happiness and trust. He went to the hospital where I had worked, asking all my former colleagues, from doctors and nurses to the cleaning staff, but he only received rejections and pitying looks. Dr. Miller left a long time ago. We don't know where she went. He went to the coffee shop where we used to have dates. He sat at the same table, trying to find a bit of the familiar warmth, but he only felt emptiness and cold. He contacted all our few mutual friends, but no one knew where I was. But now, witnessing my true happiness, he hesitated. By what right could he disturb that peace? By what right could he bring a storm into my life again? But the need to apologize tormented him again. He couldn't leave like this. Finally, after days of internal conflict, unable to bear it any longer, he decided to face the situation. He went to the hospital and sat in a small coffee shop across the street, waiting for the moment he had both longed for and feared. When he saw Alex and me come out together, laughing and talking animatedly, looking like a perfect couple, he couldn't take it anymore. He emerged like a ghost from the past and stood in our path. The face-to-face meeting I never wanted to happen finally occurred. When I saw Ethan standing in front of me, haggard and hollow-eyed, all my feelings swirled into a vortex. The past and the present seemed to wage a fierce battle in my heart. Pain, anger, and even a sliver of pity. The man beside me, Alex, sensed my turmoil instantly. Without asking, he simply took my hand gently, a silent but firm comfort, as if to say, "Don't be afraid, I'm here." "Sophia," Ethan began, his voice hoarse and full of pain, a sound I hadn't heard in a long time. I found you." "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice colder and more distant than I expected. I wrapped myself in an armor so as not to show any weakness. "I came to apologize," he said, his eyes red and filled with unshed tears. "I know I don't have the right anymore, but please, give me a chance to fix it, to start over." "I realize now, Sophia, without you, nothing makes sense. Couldn't we start over?" His belated plea didn't move me. It only seemed ridiculous and a bit bitter. Start over? After everything that had happened? After he made his choice, pushed me, and indirectly caused the death of our child? What did he think I was? A toy he could discard and pick up easily whenever it suited him? Alex, who had been silent by my side all this time, holding my hand firmly, spoke then. His voice was deep and steady, with no trace of jealousy or animosity, only absolute protection for me. "Excuse me, but I believe that decision is Sophia's to make. However, as the person by her side now, I ask that you respect her current life and her peace." Ethan looked at Alex with the hostility of someone treated as an outsider. Then his gaze returned to me, a look that had transformed into a pitiful plea. "Sophia, who is this man? You already have someone else? So quickly? Sophia, have you forgotten me? Have you forgotten our 5 years? All our memories?" He was trying to cling to the past, trying to revive a feeling that was already dead. "Forget?" I let out a laugh, a dry, sarcastic, bitter laugh. "How could I forget, Ethan? How could I forget the day you coldly chose your old flame over me? How could I forget the day you mercilessly pushed the woman who was carrying your own blood in her womb? And the pain of losing my son, a pain I will have to carry in my heart forever. How could I forget that? How?" Each word I spoke, though not shouted, was like a piece of sharp, broken glass, stabbing into his guilty conscience. Ethan staggered back, his face turning pale. He put a hand to his chest as if struggling to breathe. "I was wrong. I've paid the price, Sophia. Bella tricked me. That child wasn't my son. She's gone. I've lost everything. My job, my honor, my family. Now, all I have left is you. Please, have pity on me." "Pity?" I raised an eyebrow. The last bit of compassion I had left vanished completely, replaced by contempt. "You want me to have pity on you? And who had pity on me when I was at my lowest? Who had pity on my son, who never even had a chance to be born? You made your choice, Ethan. You chose her and the child you thought was yours. You chose to abandon me without a moment's hesitation. So now, live with that choice. Don't come to me begging for compassion. I have none to give, and I don't want to give it." I was tired. I didn't want to argue with him anymore. It was enough. The past needed to be laid to rest. I turned to Alex, my gaze softening. "Let's go." It was I who took his hand first. A gesture that was the clearest and firmest answer. "No, Sophia, don't go!" Ethan cried out. He lunged forward to grab me like a drowning man clinging to a piece of driftwood. But Alex was quicker. He stepped in his way. His tall figure was like a solid, unshakable wall. "Mr. Hayes, that's enough." Alex's voice was cold and authoritative. "Sophia has been very clear. She owes you nothing. Please, conduct yourself with some dignity." The standoff between the two men, the past stained with guilt and the present filled with understanding, continued in a tense silence. Ethan looked at Alex, then at me, standing safely behind him. Finally, despair won. He let his arms fall. His shoulders slumped in defeat. He realized he had truly lost me. Forever. We turned and walked away, leaving Ethan alone in the crowd. I didn't look back. I didn't want to see his pained face anymore. Not because I feared my heart would soften, but because I knew this was the price he had to pay. The price for betrayal, selfishness, and cruelty. Everyone must take responsibility for their actions. And the greatest punishment for Ethan was not a legal sentence, but the regret and guilt that would haunt him for the rest of his life. On the way back, Alex didn't ask anything about the encounter. He just drove in silence, glancing at me occasionally in the rearview mirror with a look of concern and empathy. When the car stopped in front of my house, he broke the silence and said softly, "Are you okay?" I turned to him, the man who had always been by my side in my most difficult moments, the one who had offered his shoulder without asking for anything in return. And for the first time, I smiled at him with a truly serene smile, a smile free from the past. "I'm okay. I'm really okay. Thank you, Alex, for always being there." He smiled back. "A smile as warm as the morning sunday I told you. I would wait until you were truly ready." That night, I thought a lot. The encounter with Ethan, though it had stirred up old wounds and hurt a little, became the final remedy that healed me completely. It made me realize that my love for him, along with our poor son, had truly died. And it also made me realize that a new happiness was right in front of me, waiting patiently with all its heart. I had been running and fearing for too long. It was time to give myself a chance, and to give him one. The next morning, it was I who contacted Alex to meet. We sat at our usual coffee shop with its beautiful bougainvillea. This time, there was no awkwardness or evasion. I told him everything. My marriage, Ethan's betrayal, the son I lost. I cried, releasing everything I had kept bottled up and suffered in silence for so long. Alex just listened quietly, his warm hand holding mine firmly, without judgment, only empathy and understanding. When I finished speaking, I felt as if a 1,000-pound weight had been lifted from my shoulders. He, without a word, pulled me into a tight hug. "I understand now," he whispered in my ear. "I understand everything. You must have suffered so much. From now on, let me share that burden with you. Let me carry it with you, Sophia." And this time, I didn't push him away. I nodded, crying tears of release and happiness. I decided to stay by Alex's side, to choose a new future and a new happiness, because I knew he was the man heaven had given me, a precious gift after so many storms in my life. From that day on, the relationship between Alex and me entered a new chapter. With no more doubts or distance, I opened my heart completely to accept his sincere and generous love. And he, with his gentleness and patience, healed every last scar on my soul. He never tried to erase my past. On the contrary, he respected it and faced it with me. He took me to a quiet monastery by the sea, where we held a small ceremony for the son I lost. He told me, "So the child can rest in peace, and so he can see that from now on, his mother will always be happy." His gesture moved me to tears. He didn't just love me, he loved my pain too. A few months later, we decided to get married. It wasn't an ostentatious, grand wedding to show off to the world, but an intimate and warm ceremony on a luxurious yacht gliding smoothly over the blue sea of Santa Barbara. Only his parents, who welcomed and loved me like a daughter, and our closest friends attended. That day, I once again wore a pure white wedding dress, but the feeling was completely different. There was no longer oppression or bitter tears, only complete happiness and absolute peace of the soul. As I walked down the aisle on the arm of my father-in-law, a kind man who treated me like his own daughter, I saw Alex waiting for me. He wore an elegant white tuxedo, a smile as radiant as the sun, and his eyes shone with happiness. The moment our hands touched, I knew this was my destiny, the most serene refuge of my life. After the wedding, our life was a succession of sweet and happy days. Alex was the perfect husband. He loved and cared for me with devotion, but above all, he always respected my career and my personal space. He supported me in continuing to work at the hospital, in attending international medical conferences. He told me, "I love you because you are Dr. Sophia Miller, a talented, independent woman with a big heart. Continue to be yourself, to shine in your own way." And on our first wedding anniversary, another miracle came into my life, a sweet reward that life was giving me. I got pregnant. This time, everything was calm and full of happiness. Alex took meticulous care of me. He read all the books on prenatal care and personally cooked nutritious meals for me. He accompanied me to every ultrasound, nervous and excited. And the day our daughter was born, when I held that small, rosy creature in my arms and heard her clear cry, I broke down in tears. Tears of complete happiness, a happiness I thought I had lost forever. We named her Grace, hoping her life would always be serene and peaceful, without the storms her mother had endured. The child was the fruit of our love and the most precious gift of life. Seeing Alex awkwardly holding the baby in his arms, his face lit up with joy, I knew that true happiness had finally smiled upon me. Sometimes, news of Ethan reached me. I was told that after my rejection, he completely fell apart. He sold his house and car and used part of that money to try and make amends for his past mistakes. Then he left Chicago to live a quiet life somewhere else. I no longer hate him. I just hope he finds peace in his heart. Because the greatest punishment for a traitor is not the revenge of others, but the remorse of their own conscience, a life sentence from which they can never escape. And then he saw the other man. A tall, elegant man who waited for me every evening at the hospital entrance with a bouquet of flowers in his hand. He saw how that man, Alex, affectionately placed my coat over my shoulders when it got chilly. He saw how Alex gently opened the car door for me and looked at me with eyes full of love and tenderness. And he saw how I responded to that look with a smile of happiness and trust. The relief of seeing a good person find a safe harbor, the satisfaction of seeing a traitor pay a high price for his mistakes. And above all, we need a moment to reflect on the profound messages and life lessons that this tragic yet human story leaves us with. This is not simply a story of love, betrayal, and revenge. Dear listeners, if we look deeper, it is a heartbreaking confession about the power of letting go, a hymn to the miraculous resurrection of a heart that was believed to be dead, and a valuable lesson on how to find true happiness even after having gone through the end of pain. The first and most painful lesson this story leaves us with is perhaps the collapse of an old belief that many of us still hold. The belief that love and sacrifice can conquer all, that a good husband will be a solid shield protecting me from all storms. The protagonist, Sophia, is an almost perfect social model. She is a talented, elegant, and successful doctor, a wise wife, and a daughter-in-law who always strives to fulfill her duties. For 5 years, she lived with absolute faith in her ideal husband, Ethan. Faced with the heavy pressure of infertility and the reproaches and hurtful comments of her mother-in-law, she suffered and felt guilty, but never complained. She believed that with her husband's love and understanding, she could overcome any difficulty. Ethan's love was once her anchor, her whole world, the reason she fought against fate. But the tragedy did not come from an external storm, but from the person she trusted most. When the past, named Bella, returned, that shield shattered. That anchor turned to poison, and her world collapsed. Ethan's betrayal was not simply a passing mistake or a simple slip-up. It revealed a much colder and crueler truth, that no matter how beautiful love is, no matter how much it is built on years of affection, it can be eroded by selfish desire, external pressure, and the weakness of a man without enough responsibility. The promise of peace he made to her under the campus tree was as fragile as smoke, liable to disappear with any gust of wind. This story sends a profound warning message to all of us, especially women. Do not place all your faith and happiness in the hands of another person, no matter how much that person loves you. Love is an important foundation, but it is not everything. A woman's happiness cannot be built solely on a man's love. It must be built on her own worth, her intellectual and economic independence, and her self-esteem. Love, but love with clarity. Leave an escape route for yourself, a space of your own. Sacrifice, but not to the point of losing yourself, of losing your principles and your fundamental values. Because when the storm comes, The only person who can save you will not be a prince or a hero, but your own strength, your perseverance, and your independence. From the collapse of faith, we move to a more important lesson, a lesson that marks a turning point, the extraordinary power of letting go. When Sophia lost the child she had longed for 5 years, and even the chance to be a mother forever, and most painfully was abandoned by her husband with a cold divorce paper, she fell to the deepest pit of hell. At that moment, she could have chosen the path of hatred. She could have stayed to take revenge, to destroy Ethan and Bella's lives. It is a very human reaction, and probably an option that many of us would have considered in her situation. But no, Sophia chose another path, a much more difficult path, but 10,000 times more noble and admirable. She chose to let go. She signed the divorce papers, said goodbye with painful but firm words, and left in silence. She started a new life in a completely unknown land. Her decision to let go was not an escape in weakness or failure. It was a choice full of courage and wisdom. She understood that clinging to someone whose heart has gone and whose love has cooled would only cause her more pain and devalue her own worth. Revenge can give momentary satisfaction, but it also traps the soul in a prison of past and resentment, preventing it from finding peace. She chose the path of freeing herself. Dear listeners, thank you for joining us until the end of the story of Dr. Sophia Miller's life, here on the Whispers in the Dusk channel. As the final chapter of the story closes, a bittersweet aftertaste remains in our hearts, a mixture of the sweetness of happiness and the bitterness of what was. Probably, very complex emotions are settling in the hearts of each of us. I thought of my husband Ethan. He would be ecstatic. For the past 5 years, although his mother, Carol Hayes, had constantly pressured me and blamed me for our childlessness, he had always stood by my side, squeezing my hand and telling me, "Don't worry, Sophia. A child is a gift from heaven. If it comes, it will be wonderful, and if not, that's okay too. Having each other is enough. There may be a scar left, but at least it gives us a chance to heal." And when Sophia had the courage to let go of the past, a new door, a new horizon, truly opened. The appearance of Alex in her life was not a coincidence of fate, but a deserved reward for her perseverance, her character, and her brave choice. But this second love story gives us an even deeper lesson about true love, and about patience and empathy in love between mature people. When Alex, a man almost perfect in appearance, family, and character, confessed his love to her, what did Sophia do? She rejected him coldly. The wound left by Ethan's betrayal was still too large and deep. It made her act like a snail that, at the slightest external contact, quickly hides in its hard shell. Her reaction is very realistic. It shows the terrible, destructive power of the pain of betrayal. It not only takes away love, but also faith in love, the courage to start a new relationship. But Alex did not give up, and the way he courted her is a valuable lesson on true conquest. He did not attack her fiercely, he did not pressure her, nor did he buy her with money or material goods. He chose to be a friend, a moral support by her side. He was patient, empathetic, respected her pain, and gave her the space and time to heal on her own. His love was not a selfish possession, but a generous companionship and a waiting game. The daily sunflowers, the hot chamomile tea every night, these small, silent, and delicate acts were more powerful than 1,000 oaths or 1,000 expensive gifts. With his sincerity and understanding, he slowly and gently melted the layer of ice around her heart. Their relationship redefines mature love for us. Love is not about finding a perfect person without flaws, but about finding someone who can love even your imperfect scars. Love is not an effort to change the other person to our liking, but to give them enough space and time to find the best version of themselves. True love requires patience, empathy, and absolute respect. The story of Sophia and Alex is a message and a beacon of hope for all those who have once collapsed and lost faith in love. Do not close the door of your heart because of a single fall. Somewhere out there is surely a person born for you, waiting for you. But happiness will not come knocking on your door if you keep it firmly closed. Only when you heal your own wounds, stand up for yourself, and open your heart will that person have the chance to come in and build a new happiness with you. Finally, the end of the story is not a reunion with the ex-husband or an easy forgiveness, but a complete liberation and a new, brighter, and fuller happiness. Ethan paid the price for his betrayal. The price was not poverty or jail, but a much heavier punishment, the remorse of his conscience. He got the son he longed for, but through another deception. In the end, he lost everything. A few months later, we decided to get married. It wasn't an ostentatious, grand wedding to show off to the world, but an intimate and warm ceremony on a luxurious yacht gliding smoothly over the blue sea of Santa Barbara. Only his parents, who welcomed and loved me like a daughter, and our closest friends attended. That day, I once again wore a pure white wedding dress, but the feeling was completely different. Sophia not only found a new love, but she found herself completely again. She is still an excellent doctor, an independent and strong woman, but now she is also a beloved wife and a happy mother. The overflowing joy of holding her daughter Grace in her arms is not just a sweet reward from fate, but also a powerful affirmation that happiness comes to those who deserve it, to those who never lose hope and always maintain a good heart and a personality worthy of respect.